A scorched land, a traumatized wild animal, and a firefighter haunted by what he couldn't save. When the massive park fire ignited in Chico's Bidwell Park on July 24, 2024, few could have predicted it would become one of California's most devastating wildfires of the year. Fueled by unusually hot conditions following a wet winter that produced abundant vegetation, the fire would eventually consume over 429,000 acres across Butte and Tehama counties, destroying more than 700 structures and forcing thousands to evacuate. The Feather River Wildlife Rehabilitation Center was already operating beyond capacity that summer. The statewide surge in wildlife injuries from increasingly severe fire seasons had pushed the facility to its limits. For Center Director Dr. Elena Vega, a 15-year veteran of wildlife medicine, the arrival of yet another critical case seemed like just one more challenge in an overwhelming season. "We have absolutely no space," she explained to Fire Department Liaison Marco Ruiz as he carried in a transport crate. "We've already had to transfer 3 bears to other facilities this week." Marco shook his head. "You'll want to make room for this one, Elena, from the heart of the park fire. Firefighter found it trapped under a fallen tree." The rescue was a severely burned bobcat, approximately 2 years old. It had survived the initial firestorm by sheltering in a rocky crevice, but was discovered unconscious and gravely injured beneath a fallen oak. Dr. Chen, the center's lead veterinarian, documented the extensive list of injuries. 3rd-degree burns on all 4 paws, 2nd-degree burns along the right flank, severe smoke inhalation damage to the lungs, and significant dehydration requiring immediate fluid therapy, she told Elena after the initial assessment was complete. "Physically, we can stabilize him, but I'm concerned about the psychological trauma." Unlike many rescued wildlife that fight or flee when approached, this bobcat, temporarily named Ember by the medical team, showed profound dissociation. When approached in his enclosure, he would press himself into the furthest corner, his body trembling violently. "He's shut down completely," observed Kelsey Martinez, the center's behavioral specialist, after her 3rd attempt to connect with the bobcat. "Most predators show aggression when cornered. This level of withdrawal indicates severe psychological trauma." For 2 weeks, the staff made little progress despite their best efforts. Ember would eat only when the enclosure was completely empty of human presence. Security cameras captured movement only during the quietest overnight hours, when he would finally leave his corner to pace in tight, anxious circles. "We're running out of options," Elena acknowledged during a staff meeting in early August. "If we can't get him to accept minimal human interaction for medical treatment, we may need to make a difficult decision." That Friday afternoon, one day before the deadline they'd set, Kelsey made one final attempt to reach Ember. Rather than approaching the enclosure directly, she simply sat on the floor in the corridor outside her back against the opposite wall, reading aloud from a wildlife management manual. For nearly an hour, she pretended to ignore the bobcat while maintaining a calm presence. When she finally stood to leave, she noticed something that gave her pause. Ember remained in his corner, but his eyes were now tracking her movement. For the briefest moment, their gazes met the first eye contact he had initiated since his arrival. "I need 48 more hours," she told Elena, her voice urgent. "There's still someone in there." Reluctantly, Elena agreed to the extension. Neither of them could have anticipated that the following day would bring an unexpected visitor who would change Ember's story forever. Marcus Ramirez hadn't planned to visit the rehabilitation center that Saturday morning. At 32, his position as a firefighter and wildlife rescue specialist with the San Bernardino County Fire Department kept him busy, and the recent weeks with the park fire had left him exhausted. His sleepless nights from nightmares about the creatures he couldn't save in time only made things worse. "I'm just stopping by to share some information about trapped animals," he explained to the volunteer at the reception desk. "My team found several deer and a family of foxes in the evacuation zone." Sofia Garcia, the volunteer coordinator, overheard the conversation. "Marcus Ramirez, I think there's a case you should see. I'm working on the file for a bobcat from the Chico fire area." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. have a little time." Sophia led Marcus through the center's corridors, past enclosures housing various recovering animals, a bald eagle with a broken wing, a family of orphaned raccoons, an injured mountain lion. "We're operating beyond capacity due to the fire season," she explained. "But this case has all of us stumped. A bobcat from the heart of the park fire, severely burned but physically recovering. The issue is psychological." As they approached the isolation area, Sophia lowered her voice. "He's been here 2 weeks, but still won't let anyone near him. We call him Ember. Probably won't recover enough to return to the wild if he continues to refuse treatment." Marcus stopped in front of Ember's enclosure, careful not to make sudden movements. In the farthest corner, under dim light, he could see a huddled, reddish-brown form. The burns on the bobcat's skin had begun to heal, but its posture displayed profound fear. "Where did he come from?" Marcus asked, keeping his eyes on the animal. "Bidwell Canyon area. A firefighter found him trapped under a fallen tree. They said he wouldn't have survived if he hadn't been discovered." A strange feeling washed over Marcus. He had fought the park fire in its early days before being reassigned. He remembered the Bidwell Canyon area, where the flames had spread so quickly many animals couldn't escape in time. Without another word, Marcus sat down on the floor about 6 feet from the enclosure, his back against the wall. He didn't look directly at Ember, just sat quietly, creating a non-threatening presence. "What are you doing, hon?" Sophia whispered. "Sometimes with traumatized wildlife, a quiet presence works better than any technique," he gently explained. "I just want to try something. When will Kelsey or Elena be in?" "They'll be here in about an hour." "Should I leave you here alone?" Marcus nodded, his eyes still not leaving the enclosure. As Sophia left, he began speaking softly, his voice calm. "I remember that day," he said, his voice low and even. "When the fire broke out, I was one of the first ones there, you know. We thought we could contain it, but then the wind shifted." Marcus continued talking, telling about the fire, about his feeling of helplessness when they had to retreat and knew countless creatures would be trapped. It was as if he needed to release these memories, and the bobcat had unexpectedly become the perfect listener. After about 20 minutes, Marcus noticed a slight change in Ember. The bobcat was still hiding in the corner, but its ears were now oriented toward him, tracking the sound of his voice. As a wildlife behavior specialist, Marcus recognized this as a small positive sign. He continued talking now in a lower voice about the animals he had managed to save and those he couldn't. When he told about a burned mountain goat he had held in his arms until its final moments, his voice broke. In that moment, Marcus noticed Ember had moved, not much, just a few inches away from the corner, but enough for him to notice. "I understand," Marcus whispered. "I understand what it's like to be surrounded by fire, the smell of it, the sound of it, the feeling of not being able to escape." At those words, something changed in Ember's eyes. He still maintained his distance, but his focus on Marcus became more intense. When Elena and Kelsey returned, they stood silently at the threshold, not wanting to break the moment unfolding. "Who are you?" Elena finally asked, her voice low. "Marcus Ramirez, firefighter and wildlife rescue specialist from San Bernardino." "What did you do with him?" "Just talked. Sometimes that's all they need." Marcus stood up slowly. "Can I come back tomorrow?" "There's something about this bobcat." Elena looked past Marcus to the enclosure. For the first time since arriving, Ember wasn't hiding in the darkest corner. He still maintained a safe distance, but stood in a position where he could clearly observe Marcus. "Of course," she answered, "but I'm curious. Your firefighter uniform, you're still wearing it from the field." Marcus nodded. "I just finished my shift." "Why?" Kelsey understood immediately. The smell. He might recognize the scent of fire smoke and ash, familiar smells from where he was rescued. Over the next few days, Marcus visited the center whenever he could. He brought his firefighting jacket and gear that still carried a faint smell of smoke, not enough to be harmful, but enough to trigger recognition. On the third day, as Marcus sat reading outside the enclosure, Ember approached the door for the first time. The bobcat still maintained a safe distance, but his golden eyes never left Marcus. "I remember you, huh?" Marcus whispered, just loud enough for only Ember to hear. "Bidwell Canyon area near Horseshoe Lake. I'm the one who pulled the tree off you, aren't I? I didn't think you would survive." A chill ran down Marcus's spine as Ember made a small sound. Not a threatening growl, but a soft noise, almost like a house cat's recognition of its owner. "Impossible," Elena whispered, watching through the monitoring camera. "Could this be the bobcat you rescued?" "I'm not sure," Marcus admitted. "I was involved in rescuing several animals in the early days of the fire, but there was one bobcat. I thought he was dead when I handed him over to the animal rescue team." Elena checked the intake records. Ember was brought in by the Fire Department Wildlife Management Team on July 25th, found at Bidwell Canyon. No specific rescuer name. To test their theory, Marcus wore clean clothes on his next visit. There was no special reaction from Ember, but when he produced a piece of his used firefighting coat that had been at the park fire, the bobcat immediately approached, nose twitching, to recognize the scent. "That's you," Marcus whispered, a feeling of confirmation washing over him. "You're the little one I found under that fallen oak tree." The breakthrough moment came on the fourth day when Marcus was allowed to enter the enclosure under close supervision. Instead of reacting with fear as he had with everyone else, Ember maintained his distance but didn't seek to hide. After 10 minutes of silence, the bobcat slowly approached until he was less than 3 feet from Marcus. "Unbelievable," Kelsey whispered from outside. "I've never seen such a rapid change in a traumatized wild animal." Over the following weeks, a special relationship formed. Marcus rearranged his work schedule to visit the center more frequently. Ember began allowing other staff to approach when Marcus was present, critical for medical treatment. "He's healing it," Elena remarked to Kelsey, as they watched Marcus sitting in the enclosure reading a book while Ember lay nearby. "And I think it's healing him too." Indeed, Marcus was changing as well. The nightmares about the fires began to subside. He spoke about the guilt that had haunted him, about the creatures he couldn't save, about the seemingly endless flames. Through helping Ember recover, he found healing for himself as well. "That's why I became a firefighter," he confided to Elena one day. "To save those who couldn't save themselves. But sometimes there are too many to save. And that's why we do this work," Elena replied. "Not to save them all, but to give the survivors a chance." After 2 months, it was time to make a decision about Ember's future. His physical wounds had healed completely, but the big question remained, could he return to the wild? "In most cases, our goal is reintegration," Elena explained in the assessment meeting. "But with Ember, I'm concerned about the psychological dependence on Marcus." Indeed, while Ember had recovered remarkably, he still reacted negatively when Marcus wasn't present. He would accept care from Kelsey and some other staff, but true trust was reserved for the firefighter who had saved his life. "I think we have a solution," Marcus said. "I've spoken with the Bureau of Land Management about a preserve near my fire station. There's a program for monitoring released wildlife. Ember could be released there with a tracking collar so we can monitor him." Elena considered. "He would be free but still in an area where you could access him if needed." "Exactly," Marcus nodded. "And I could participate in the monitoring program as part of my wildlife rescue duties." On a cool October morning, a small group gathered at the San Bernardino Nature Preserve. Marcus was wearing his firefighter uniform familiar to Ember and holding a large transport cage. "We've selected this area for its stable water source and abundant prey population," the preserve's ecologist explained. "There are remote monitoring cameras so we can observe his progress without pressuring him." Elena and Kelsey stood nearby, emotional at this moment. They had witnessed many animal releases, but Ember's case was special. "Ready, sir?" Marcus asked, looking into the cage, where Ember was watching the new environment with alertness. He placed the cage on a clearing with a clear view to the nearby forest and opened the door. Unlike many release cases where animals typically dash out immediately, Ember remained in the cage, eyes on Marcus. "It's okay," he said softly. "This is your home now. You're free. You're—" Ember finally stepped out of the cage, tentatively nose sniffing the air and ground. He took a few steps, then stopped to look back at Marcus, as if uncertain. "Go on," he whispered, his heart heavy, but knowing this was right. The bobcat took a few more steps, then suddenly ran toward the edge of the forest. At the border between the clearing and the woods, he stopped, turned his head for one last look, then disappeared into the trees. "Good luck, little friend," Marcus said, his voice tight. Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, and remember, we can still track him through the collar." In the following months, Marcus frequently checked the tracking data. Ember gradually expanded his territory, adapting well to the wild environment. Sometimes when duty brought Marcus near Ember's area, he would stop for a while, hoping to catch a glimpse. He rarely actually saw the bobcat, but knowing he was out there was enough. The data from the collar showed Ember was hunting successfully, establishing territory, and living the life of a wild bobcat. A year after the park fire, Marcus and Ember stood on a hilltop overlooking the burned area, which was now beginning to green again. New shoots emerged from blackened tree trunks, and the first wildflowers added color to the ashen soil. "Look at that," Marcus said softly, though knowing Ember didn't understand his words. "Life goes on, even after the firestorm." Ember stood beside him, unleashed, uncaged, free, but choosing to stay. The bobcat surveyed the landscape, ears alert, golden eyes reflecting the afternoon sun. In that moment, they were both survivors, human and wild animal, finding healing through a bond that transcended species boundaries. A bond forged in fire, strengthened by trust, and becoming a testament to the resilience not just of nature, but of the heart. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button now. Share with someone who needs inspiration today. Help us continue bringing these amazing true stories to you, and remember, sometimes the right connection can change everything.